Hello everybody, it is I, Jacob the Garden Snake. I'm nobody special, I'm just a YouTuber who makes motorcycle content. In these videos, I go to a website of a motorcycle manufacturer and I just give you my opinions. We're gonna do Honda today. I don't look at the ATVs or the whatevers, this is a motorcycle channel, so we'll start with motorcycles. Let's just jump into it. The Goldwing, $25,000, a big old Goldwing. That thing's so dang heavy, why don't you just get a car? 804 pounds. But you know the thing about this big bike? It's actually really nice to ride. These things are incredibly well engineered. Big Boxster style engine is very balanced. You go to ride one of these and your feet aren't way out in front of you like a cruiser. You actually are riding in a fairly confident, like, you know, mid-control kind of setup. I know they got Apple CarPlay and Android CarPlay and all that jazz. Oh look, it's a 7-speed. Honda has been going hard with the dual clutch transmissions, the automatics, I could say, and they're pretty much the only major manufacturer really messing with it. Hill start assist. This feature momentarily holds your motorcycle position on inclines after you release the brakes. That's pretty cool. Electric windscreen, large trunk. Yeah, that's the other thing too. I mean, if you want a big touring bike and bring all your stuff, you don't have to do anything. I mean, it's got all the luggage there. It feels like a car in some senses. The Goldwing, yeah, they're cool. Let's jump down to the cruisers. The Fury, the American Choppers and other shows on at the time, and people really wanted a bike like this. But the problem is, if you actually want to go out and buy a custom chopper, you pretty much need to have the money outright to buy them. At least back then, probably over 20 grand. No one's gonna finance that 20 grand because it's a custom bike. Even if you could get past that, most, you know, standard insurance companies weren't gonna mess with that. And then do you have a warranty? Who do you go to if you need to get it fixed? The logistics of actually owning a chopper like this, they're tricky. But there was a lot of middle-aged men that wanted one of these. Honda stepped up and built this goofy thing. They're actually not that terrible to ride. The engine is the VTX 1300. That's actually a really good engine. Shaft drive's pretty cool. They're very careful about photographing this thing from the front because you'll see there's a radiator. I don't think that's that big a deal. I think the annoying thing is having fake air fins on the engine. This is the problem I have with a lot of non-Harley cruisers, is that they try to look like a Harley, and that's exactly what this engine's trying to look like right here. That to me is kind of silly. I'd rather you just own that it's a Japanese motorcycle that's water cooled. I mean, what, it's like more efficient of an engine? Oh no, okay, we better hide that. But still, like, you know, if that's what you're going for, you really want that style of bike, this is a bike that makes sense. They still have the shadows in here too. Let's look at the Phantom one. Another bike that kind of was always trying to have like a Harley-ish look. There's nothing wrong with this bike, nor exciting about this bike at all. Every time I rode one, I was just kind of like, you know, meh. Why only have one picture? Just don't have the gallery page if you're just gonna have the one picture. No specifications for this model. But anyways, let's look at the Rebel lineup. We'll pull up the 500, because the 500, 300, virtually the same minus the engine. Oh, they got an LED light on them now. They're not hiding it. There's a radiator. It's a modern engine. And these are fun little bikes to ride. If you were to get one of these, I'd get the 500. Even if you were a new rider and you were like, no, I want, you know, you'd get the 500. I have that same 300 motor in a small dual sport. It's not gonna scare you. The 500 will be a little more highway friendly. 408 pounds. It's not bad for a cruiser bike. I love they continue this lineup, and they did a Rebel 1100. It's got the same engine, Africa Twin. From what I understand, has been slightly tuned differently to make it a little more rumpy and a little more torquey. I haven't been on one of these though. I don't know. You have the option of DTC. Yeah, bro. Right? I know. Totally. Let's go for a ride. You get a little fairing for it. Why not? I think one of the most impressive things though about this bike is the price. It's under $10,000. Yeah, I dig it. It's different, but it's still a cruiser. It's not. It's trying to be its own thing, and I appreciate that. If I was to be in the market for a cruiser, you know, why not? It seems like actually a pretty cool bike. I just don't know why the Rebels are down here. These old school ones are up here. We need to flip this around, guys. Who's the website guy? Put the Rebels up top. We'll move on to the sport bikes. So they've got the normal like 1000, and they've got something, it's like a 1000 Fireblade SP, and the price is quite a bit more. What's the deal with this thing? Is this like based off a race bike, right? Bore and stroke, the same as our MotoGP Champion bike. It's not like the exact same engine, obviously it's a street legal engine. But does this have a different engine than the normal 1000? Built-in bottom bypass cooling, finger follow rocker cams. Usually those are heavier. I mean, like my CRF technically has these. I think you'd want a bucket and shim. Design reduces weight of the valve system by approximately 75% compared to shim and bucket. I guess I was wrong. It's like saying we made our hammers out of wood because it's stronger, and I'm like, wait, what? Aluminum forged pistons, blah, blah. So they've done some cool stuff. So I'm guessing this is like a different engine, isn't it? Titanium connecting rods. Well, that will definitely add some money. Olin suspension, Brembo brakes, titanium muffler. Everyone's gonna replace. Then you've got the normal Fireblade or the normal CBR 1000R. Feels kind of lame to look at that now after looking at the other one, but at least it's affordable. The super sporty one is, just be honest, most people are going to buy that to have it as a bragging point. With thousands, you're going to be just doing dumb fast things on the street. 600 is basically the same thing, but a 600, you get it. I'm not as big fan of the way these ones look. The current CBRs went to gallery. There's nothing in there. What's going on with that? Well, there's kind of a picture of it. Huh, I wonder what the tail light looks like. I wonder what the headlight looks like dead on. I wonder all kinds of things. Can we see them if we click this? No, not really. I just never understand why they sometimes just don't put pictures in there. 12 spoke wheels. You have 12 of them. 12 for 12-wheel drive. Oh, that I'm not even gonna look at it anymore. It's probably a cool bike. Well, those are super sports for doing super sport things, for racing, bro. Which, let's be honest, 99% of them are never gonna go racing. Okay, this is pretty cool. The CB1000R Black Edition. I love the styling the way this looks. Wow, I mean, they took pictures of that thing. Woo, that is sharp looking. 467 pounds. It's always goofy to me when like the naked versions, like the naked style of the bike is heavier than the super sport version with all the plastics on it. 13,000 is not bad. The bars over clip-ons are gonna be a little bit more up, but if you look at the dude's leg right here, the bend in it, that's still like totally like super sport rear sets on there. I couldn't rock that bike. I've had a knee surgery. I can ride a bike like that. I don't like doing it for long. It's just uncomfortable for me. CBR 650. This thing, you know, it's kind of weird because it doesn't really compete with all the other Japanese 650 bikes out there that are parallel twins. This is an inline 4, the 600, and then you got the 650, but the 650 is slightly slower, but the price is a little bit better. It's confusing from like a consumer standpoint, like, well, what's the deal with this bike? You could compare it to things like maybe like an FZ9, but it's full fairing. I've never understood this bike. They have a naked version, naked, and I do like the styling of this bike. This looks good. We get one photo of it apparently again. Oh, I hate when these things only have one photo. We do get this really cool one of the dash. This is a cool looking dash. Why would you not show this off more and have better photos? I've never understood the media that people make for their motorcycles, like a couple photos, this and that. Have like a video or something about these bikes. Check it out, here's the whatever, and you have chapters in there, check all these different things out. Here's the dash, here's how it works, here's a detailed breakdown. People would love that stuff, but they never do that. Hire me, I'll do it for you. But moving on, there's also the 500s and 300s. I think you could start on something like this. It gives you the super sport look, but if you go ride one of these, you'll see it's actually a lot more upright than you think it would be. No gallery. Look at the bend in the guy's leg here. Not that bent over. This is a fairly low seat height. You're pretty close to the ground. This looks cool. It looks the part. This would teach you a lot of the basics and things you would need to know about riding a bike like this. The naked version is 6,700. Its price is like basically the same as an FZ09, but it's a lot less motor, and oddly enough, it's heavier than an FZ07. It's not a bad bike, it's just that there's better ones for better prices. The 300 version, it's cool, they seemingly all have inverted forks now. If something like this existed, one of these like 300s when I started riding, I would have probably totally gone with one. Let's go to mini motos. Look at the old new Grom here. This one with the little fender right here, I love it. But I think the styling of this side plastic is really odd. The only reason I even sold mine though is because all my buddies that had them for some reason sold them. It's really not a super fun bike to ride by yourself. I miss the thing, we'd be riding through traffic, racing each other, and no one around us even knew. Like the cars were generally accelerating at normal speeds, and we were in just a full-on crazy race. And how long those races could last because how slow the bikes were. Yeah, I guess they're 5 speeds now. The Monkey just seems to be a Grom with different rear suspension and set up to look more like a monkey bike. The only thing that sucks about this bike is it costs more than the normal Grom. $700 more dollars for the Monkey? That seems too much. Also, we have our Super Cubs in here. The old school bike, they brought it back, and then they also made the trail version, which is way more cool, so I'm gonna click on that one. Kind of a scooter, kind of a motorcycle. Another bike I would love to have just because I think it would be super fun to like do a little adventures with it. Oh, I didn't realize you get a backup kicker on there. That's cool, you don't get that on the Grom. There's guy Ed March who's got the old C90 version, the actual old school one. He's rode it all around the world. And so, you know, the old one will do it, the new one certainly will too. Actually an around the world bike right there. Not just a little fun putting around bike. The Honda Navi. This thing in my Discord, by the way, we were talking about this thing for a while when this thing got announced. I have a Discord, it's linked to my Patreon. It's $1 a month. We're in the voice chats all the time, just BSing around. We saw this Honda Navi, we all got so excited. It's basically a scooter, right? That's kind of styled to look like a Grom. But the price is amazing, it's $1,800. This is a giant trunk right here. This one even has a 360 view. I mean, why is the effort for the $1,800 bike to have all this, but some of these more expensive bikes, only one photo? It's not even a real photo, it's like the rendering. Oh, look at it with a little graphics kit on there. Let's look at Adventure Dual Sport machines. Africa Twin here, now 1100. Look at these guys doing cool things on them. The reality is you go sit on one of these things and you're gonna go, oh my god, this is a big motorcycle. Dual clutch transmission that you can get with these. And an off-road bike, I don't know if that's necessarily the best idea. I guess there's a lot of people out there just gonna cruise this around on mostly the streets. But if you're gonna do any kind of stuff that like you see in these pictures, you probably should stick with the manual. Big reason why is you can't loft the front end up, not easily, not in a snap. And that's something that when you're off-roading, sometimes you need to raise the front end up to clear an obstacle. Apple CarPlay, so cool. I want a motorcycle with that. just under 15,000. It's honestly a really reasonable price for what it is. Still a very capable, very hardcore bike. It will be nice when the Win, because I'm sure it's Win at this point, the Transalp 750 comes out, and it really gives us a good in-between. Because realistically, I know they got a few other bikes in here, but these other two bikes that they have aren't really that hardcore. Like the NC 750X, it's a very meh kind of motor when you ride this thing around. They have it in the adventure category, but I'd call it more of basically a touring-ish bike. The CB500X keeps working its way to being an adventure bike. This bike used to have 17s front and rear, now it's got a 19 front. I recently got it inverted for it, but I think that actually made the travel slightly less. I would call this a light adventurer. But it's a bike that, like, I feel like Honda could do a few tweaks to and make it smaller adventure bike. Moving down to the dual sport category, the XR650. That's what you had, Jake, right? No, I had an R. I love it when people be like, yeah, I got an XR650 too, and they'd always just say it like that. Like an R? No, it's an L. Then don't say you have the same bike I have. Completely different bikes. These things came out way back in the day. It's one of those bikes that's been grandfathered in by never changing what it is. They can still keep it carbureted and air-cooled as long as they don't change anything else. It's such a weird loophole how they can do that with these things. I do appreciate the styling. The styling kind of is more old school. Features: 4-stroke, single cylinder, cool efficiency, convenience, electric starter. Under design, we have sealed battery. We put a sealed battery, you know, something that's been coming in bikes for like the last 25 years. Street legal features under versatility. No specifications. What can we say? It's a big old dual sport thing, not a super powerful engine, but a tractor of an engine. $7 grand for this bike. And they've been making it for so long, one, that there's probably tons of used ones on the market. And I would think they could sell this for a little cheaper than that. I'd hope that like they could sell this for like $5 out the door. Let's look at the CRF 450L. This is the street legal version of an enduro bike. And it made everyone very mad when it came out, and it was $9,999. If you think about it, they crammed a 6-speed in it, which meant they had to widen the motor to fit it in there, which means they had to widen the frame. They also had to tweak the engine other ways to get it street legal, obviously. It's still basically everything the R bike is, but with lights and everything else. They added more things to it. Because at the end of the day, you could take this bike, throw a 19 on the rear, revalve the suspension if you really want to go super hard, but you could basically turn this back into the R bike with a 6-speed and go race it on a motocross track. I think a lot of people were also really mad when this thing came out and saw that it needed like oil changes, like something like every 800 miles or something like that. But that's what you get with one of these. I had a WR450, it was plated. That's just the name of the game with these kind of bikes. It often gets compared to like, you know, my 300. People say, well, if you're going to put that much money into 300, why wouldn't you just start with a CRF 450? This is an expensive race bike that's been made just street legal, and the other one's a good little dual sport that doesn't cost you much money and means very little maintenance. And the funny thing too is most of the money I've put into my 300 is the same mods I would have done to one of these if I had it. I have heard it tend to stall at low speeds. I'm wondering if it's because they didn't put a heavy enough flywheel in it. I feel like it's probably a little bit of that. Might be tricky to fix it since the tuning they have is already past, you know, the EPA stuff. People say you can fix it with tuning though. So it could be that, maybe not a heavy enough flywheel, and maybe people not using their clutch properly. I used to hear the same thing about my WR all the time. People say, oh, it flames out, it flames out. You'd always hear people say that. I rarely had that thing flame out on me. Yeah, these 450 engines are not like a dual sport motor. They want to rev a little harder. They do need a little more RPMs. They got amazing power, but they need a little bit of RPMs to get on top of it and get going. We've got the 300 Rally. And for those of you who don't know, I have a CRF 300. I actually almost bought the Rally version. I very much considered it, which essentially is the same bike as the CRF with a little bit bigger fuel tank and a fairing on the front to blow some wind over you. Hey, why not? I would have literally done all the same stuff. I would have supermotoed it, adventure setups, and I would have taken it to the off-road park and done all that same stuff. Obviously a little bit heavier too with the extra fuel, the fairing, you're 331 pounds. Curb weight, that Rally fairing on the front. Like, I like it because you get what it is, right? But realistically, just from like an outsider's perspective, that's a goofy looking bike right there. Let's talk about the CRF 300L, a bike that I own. They took the old 250L and they shoved that 300 motor, which isn't really a 300, it's like a 286, I believe, cc engine that was in the CBR. They stuck it in this thing. Why not? They've had it for years. I don't know why it took them so many years to do it. They did that, made a few other little changes. 306 pounds curb weight. Still plenty of people out there with enduro bikes going, that's so heavy, but it's like, it's reasonable. The thing that impresses me the most about this bike, the reason I wanted to get one, is the price. Dual sports, especially most of them that have been around forever, are so expensive. I mean, we were just looking at the XR 650L, which is, what, $7 grand. This bike, which is all new tech, it's fuel injected, it's a 6-speed, water cooled, and it's $5,350. That's such a good deal. This display is actually one of the best displays I've seen on a dual sport ever. This is better than like the 701s. Actually, the 701 and 690s have a horrible display. That's actually Really, for the bike it is. That's actually terrible what they come with. But this display gives you things like average miles per gallon. You got RPMs and the gear indicator and all this other cool stuff. They don't come with a water temp gauge. I added one to mine right there. It's just a good little bike for what it is. The biggest problems with this bike, the stock suspension is so soft, it actually has too much sag for its own weight. It's literally set up for a 0 pound, for a negative weight rider. You need to remove weight. If you are a new rider to off-roading and you're not going super fast, it's not a big deal. If you want to go fast on it, you have to upgrade the suspension. And we did that in a video. We upgraded the suspension and it really, really helps. It made this bike a very enjoyable little bike. Should we look at the scooters? The Adventure 150 thing, they have a way cooler version of this bike in other countries. I think it's a little bit bigger of an engine too. They actually have like a full off-roader scooter, where ours is kind of not, it's not the same thing. It's like a fake version. We'll look at the Ruckus because they've been making the Ruckus forever. The Ruckuses and the Metropolitans have the same engine. These are fun little bikes. I always had a good time. The price is good. I think a lot of people would buy these though because they thought, oh, I need to go to work when the fuel gets high. Is it going to get good gas mileage? It will. It'll get insanely good gas mileage. Keep in mind though, it's a 50cc 4-stroke engine. This thing is slow. You're lucky on a flat ground to go like over 35 miles an hour. A vehicle that slow, I think in most parts of America, is actually kind of dangerous. The dealership when I was a tech was in Dallas, and sometimes I'd have to go take one of these for a spin that I just did some work on, you know, more than just like a quick loop behind the back of the store. I need to go put a few miles on it. It was actually tricky. You had to think about the route you were going to take. People buy things like this and the Grom as like starter bikes, and they are kind of tricky as a starter bike. It's super easy to ride this. Like, you need to have some awareness that I think comes with experience riding a small bike where you can't be seen as well and you can't necessarily always keep up with traffic as well. Trails. Back in the day, they had the CRF 450R, and they eventually released the X. Almost too many versions of this bike now. You need to have like a thing where you have all the CRF 450s under one category, and these are different trims. And there's maybe even like a thing that says like a comparison like slot down so I can quickly see, hey, what's the difference? What's the difference between the RX, the RWE, there's the normal R, there's the RS. These are too many versions. Do I want a blue seat or do I want a red valve cover? I don't know. Do I want gold rims or black rims? If you're into this world and you know these bikes, and you probably know the difference between all these, you know, like that. For myself, who's kind of interested in this but not tightly interested in it, it's slightly annoying. The CRF 250F, that's kind of cool. I think this should be called the XR 250F. I think my CRF 300L should be called the XR 300. You put CRF on everything and it also gets confusing. I think that's why all people are like, well, it's a CRF, it's a race bike. No, it's not. Adventure Daily just got one and he loves his street legal. I bet one of these street legal would be super fun. Just a little air-cooled 250, not as serious, good price. CRF 125F, big wheel. Get the big wheel one so you can be big silly. And you got your 50, 110. I've always milled around the idea too of getting one of these, building it way up into like pit bike and plating it out, making it street legal. There's Honda's lineup and my thoughts on the individual bikes. You know, people often say Hondas, you know, they don't take chances, but they have a lot of neat bikes in here that I would say kind of feels the other way. Bikes that really stood out to me, things like the Rebel 1100's pretty dope, the Grom, the Trail 125, Africa Twin's always good, my little CRF 300L, CRF 250F, and I'm sure the RL's a really good bike too, the AR 450 RL. Yeah, that's a pretty solid one too. Those are probably some pretty standout ones in there, I suppose, if I had to pick some random ones. But yeah, good brand. I mean, I could definitely see myself getting more Hondas down the road. I've enjoyed the ones I've had so far. But anyway, that's my thoughts on that brand. Let me know what you want to see me do next.